Time for some bold and daring predictions here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Apparently some typing as well. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. I'm Soren, Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. We've got our bold and daring predictions. Defense is first. We're going to tell you this defense be what it was last year. What do we got? Always like to do this. We make our bold and daring predictions. Now we look back at them at the end of the year to see how well we did. Let's get it going right now. It's the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
And thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it, guys. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is back. You can be a part of it if you're listening to us via the podcast. We do appreciate it. Remember, you can catch us on the stream as well. LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter. They're all up there. Facebook as well. Always for you to catch the podcast, catch it live, and also be a part of the conversation. Got a lot of folks already chiming in. Always like to hear the feedback, get some of the questions from everybody. So if you get the time, we usually stream 8:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. If you want to be a part of the conversation, make plans to join us at that time. Gentlemen, the defense, number 2 in the NFL last year when it came to points and yards allowed. That's pretty good. We're going with our bold and daring predictions on the defensive side of the ball. And clearly, I think we can all agree that right now we can say that they've got a lot to live up to, right? Like they were pretty damn good last year at what they did. Jeff, they're going to need to be pretty good again this year. Any prediction you make about the team better be bold, because it was a really good team last year.
Yeah, it's weird because you do this exercise, and we're going to do it with the offense in the next podcast, obviously. But it's a little trickier because there's not a lot of names to choose from. I mean, to get really bold, you got to go out there and make some big predictions. And I'm just sitting here thinking, man, we're really looking at maybe about 7 or 8 players that we're all probably going to end up naming in this list. But I think we'll come up with some pretty bold stuff.
Yeah. Sam, what would the exercise teach you?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Jeff, I mean, this is the same thing. I know we plan on at some point doing some over-unders for some of these guys and kind of went through the same exercise. So, yeah, I mean, it's, for that reason, a lot of mine are team-oriented.
By the way, how about this one, Brad? Am I losing weight? Why, yes, maybe a couple pounds, actually, Brad. Thank you very much. How about that? They say the camera adds 10 pounds. I've always said I don't know why they put 20 cameras on me. That's always been the problem. But as far as I can tell, but thanks. A couple pounds here or there, only about 200 more to go. And I should be in, Sam McDowell shape at that point. I've given up on being in Jeff Chadiha shape. I don't know how he does it. Yeah, listen, let's dive right in then. Let's talk. Where do we want to start? Jeff, you want to go first with your first bold and daring prediction?
Yes.
The Gold and Bold?
Yes, and I'm going to be positive for all those people who erroneously label me a Chiefs hater. I'm going to start with third-year cornerback Trent McDuffie. He is going to make his first Pro Bowl appearance this year. And I know people are saying, wait a minute, he was first-team All-Pro. How bold is that? The competition in the AFC is so strong at this position. For him to actually get through Patrick Surtain, Sauce Gardner, Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, Marlon Humphrey, Jalen Ramsey, all these guys with bigger reputations, it's going to be a challenge. But I like him to do it because with L'Jarius Sneed gone, he will get more opportunities to cover, obviously, big-time receivers, more opportunities to separate himself from L'Jarius Sneed, more opportunities to earn the respect of his peers around the league. I think that ultimately gets him into his first Pro Bowl.
Can I remind you that last year we had a question, you, Eric, and I. Do the Chiefs have 3 or more Pro Bowlers on defense? You and Eric said no. How many did they end up having? Sam, do you remember? Because I said yes. I was the one that said yes. I'll tell you who my 4 were last year.
Am I allowed to type?
You are allowed to type.
I think it was one, wasn't it? Wasn't it Jones? The only one?
I think it might have just been Chris.
Yeah, just Chris Jones, because it was Creed Humphrey, Joe Tooney, Mahomes, and Kelsey outside of that.
All right, so last year I had Chris Jones, Nick Bolton, L'Jarius Sneed, and Trent McDuffie. And I don't feel like an idiot for that prediction. I only got one right, but I don't feel like an idiot. But I had McDuffie last year. I'm with you, Jeff, and I think that speaks to the point. I think it is a bold prediction because even though he's first-team All-Pro, the Pro Bowl doesn't work the same way. And this means that he would be basically accepted by his peers and coaching staffs, or 2/3 of the vote. I think that is, listen, is it the boldest thing you've ever said? No. But is it a bold prediction? I think so. I'll give it bold.
Okay. Thanks.
Sam, are you all right with it? Do you agree with it?
Yeah. Actually, I was a couple minutes late, and I noticed somebody noticed our start time wasn't on time because I was just at a Trent McDuffie signing in North Kansas City. So
look at that timing.
Yeah, thanks for dropping that in to lead it off. We ready for my first one then?
No, but do you agree on Trent McDuffie?
Yeah, I think Trent McDuffie's a really good player. I do agree with Jeff that it's bolder than people think it is because the competition is really strong. And Trent McDuffie's playing a different position where it'll be harder to make All-Pro, but he might get more recognition for his play at cornerback, and therefore maybe the path to making a Pro Bowl is more feasible because of the publicity of it. He's got to get an interception this year to make it.
Yeah.
It's not one of my 3 bold predictions, but that's a really good statement, I know.
Tommy agrees. How All-Pro Trent McDuffie actually have his first interception this year? I don't know. Maybe we should have you do the typing for Tommy Lester right there, because that's
McDuffie.
Look
at that sharp spear in The Simpsons.
Yeah. First step is acknowledging it, Jeff. Are you ready to admit you're a Chiefs fan?
A Chiefs fan. I'm wearing red right now, aren't I?
Yeah.
That's about halfway home.
You're on the way. You're on the way. All right, Sam, what do you got? What's number 1 on your list?
Yeah, I should clarify for Brad Shanks. I was not getting his autograph. I was interviewing Trent McDuffie at the autograph thing.
Are you sure? We don't need you to ask you to turn around so we can look at the back of your shirt.
No. First on my list is that the Chiefs, they finished second in yards allowed, as Soren mentioned last year. I'm going to say they drop at least 9 spots and finish
outside the top 10.
That's bold.
Outside the top 10 for yards this year. And let me tell you why. They were, in 2014 and 2015, the Chiefs went back-to-back years finishing top 10 in yards allowed. When the previous time they had done it was? I think a lot of people would say, hey, the 95 to 97 years, they had not done it since the 1970s.
Ooh.
And the reason why it's hard, look, I think you say it's really hard to go back-to-back in the NFL to win titles because you have really good players. You've got to re-sign really good players. They become more expensive. You can look at their offense and say, well, how do you do it on offense? Well, on offense, you can be as good as your quarterback is. That's your ceiling. And perhaps above it when you've got really good play calling. Defense is a weak link system, and therefore you become, as good as your weakest link. And I think that the Chiefs, it's not just that they lost L'Jarius Sneed, it's that they lost their depth. I think the Chiefs are an injury or 2 away from having some weak links on the field. And it's really hard to predict that a defense is going to just stay completely healthy for the duration of the season. So I think they're in that 11 to 15 range this year, which is still, a better than average defense for a team that I think you often look for to say, just be better than average. And so I'm going to say that's my first one. They finished outside the top 10 this year.
Okay. You said it's really difficult to do it back to back, right? So, like, if they did it back to back, and if you predicted them to do it back to back, you'd be making a bold prediction. When you pick for the natural transgression,
I mean, I got to be
as
research
norm,
on this now. You're right.
is it bold when you predict what's supposed to happen?
No.
So, okay,
It's bold for this audience, though, because everybody's expecting to be number one after being number two.
Well, let me play the hits, right? And I was going to use this one later, but I'll use it right now. So I'll mark off that I've used it. The Chiefs will remain a top 5 defense. I'm going the exact opposite of Sam McDowell. One, there's no L'Jarius Sneed. That is a really big loss. A man who was hurt to start the year, a man who was suspended to start last year. So in some ways, that's a little bit similar. They didn't add a bunch of high draft picks aside on the defensive side of the ball. So you're talking about similar cast with probably lesser talent. So I think if they can do it, that would be bold. And I really like what they're doing. I think L'Jarius Sneed was more a product of what they're doing than their success, a product of just L'Jarius Sneed. Now, don't get me wrong. L'Jarius Sneed's a heck of a player. I was talking to Justin Reed earlier today, since as long as we're name dropping, since Sam's going to go get autographs, I'll do a name drop as well. And I asked him about L'Jarius Sneed, and he said, hey, LJ's his toughness, we're going to miss it. And we were just talking about, like, how do you go about replacing those things? And I do think it'll be hard, but I think they have good depth, right? I think coverage and the secondary is about no weaknesses. I think they're still in that spot. There's no doubt they lose some depth, right? They're going to be counting on some young guys that haven't done as much. Josh Williams, if you buy the PFF grades, is one of the highest graded corners out there. And I think that's part. Leo Chenal is one of the highest graded linebackers. When you're used specifically in spots where you're at your very best, your PFF grades tend to be higher. Then when you get used all the time, oh, well, here he is in a spot that he's not at his best. I think both those guys will come back to the pack. But I do think there's pretty good talent. I think this defense was really deep. I think they got a chance to get things rolling early on. I think Chris Jones still plays at a high level. There's some other, people I'm expecting to take a step forward. I like the linebackers. I think their depth is better than advertised. So I'm not going to say that they're going to move to number 1. But I'm going to keep them in the top 5. I'm going to go the exact opposite of Sam McDowell.
So I'm a little confused. So you're saying you believe it's going to happen, or you're sort of saying it's a long shot, but you're betting on it happening?
Well, I'm saying it is a bold prediction because the odds say it shouldn't happen.
Okay.
Right? The math is. But my prediction is it will happen because I do believe in Steve Spagnuolo. I looked at everything Sam did, and that's why I arrived at this being a bold prediction. I actually thought I was really thrilled Sam went with that first because I didn't have to sell as hard that this is a bold prediction.
Yeah.
I thought I might
all the work.
I thought that the chat room might be like, dumbass, they were number 2 last year. Now you're picking them for top 5. How's that bold? Sam walked right into my trap.
That's right.
I feel so much better about my prediction now after hearing yours, because everything you said supported my argument.
Oh, it does. And that's why it's a bold prediction. But do you agree Steve Spagnuolo can coach?
Yes.
Do you agree that Dave Merritt can coach?
Yes.
Do you agree that coverage is about a zero weakness game and not about necessarily having the one best player?
Yes, but that's one of the reasons I picked mine.
Yeah, no, and I'm fine with it. I don't mind your pick, and I think it all depends upon how you look at it. And I actually will tell you I don't think yours is as bold because I think that's what should happen, and the numbers are that they should regress back. That's why I think it's bold. I don't think they do. I think they figured it out. I think the personnel is better than people think. We'll get to some of the other names we'll mention along the way. But I think they're going to be nails again on defense. I think they pick up right where they left off last year. And McDuffie plays more outside. I think Chamari Connor steps into the nickel role. I think he's a fine player. And I'm going to assume that they do a really good job, that the guys they've taken over the last couple of years, what's his name, the kid from Cincinnati last year, and Haddon, the kid this year from Tennessee, are going to be solid contributors and give them the same kind of depth. I think they know what they're doing in the D backfield. I think that's the most important part. George Karlaftis and Chris Jones both had 10-plus sacks last year. Michael Dana had a lot of sacks when Charles Omenihu wasn't there. He had, I think, 5 or 6 in the first 7 or 8 games. So I think a lot of pieces are there for them to be very effective. So I got them staying in the top 5. That's my first bold prediction.
Okay.
Jeff, where do you want to go next?
You mentioned his name and it's Chamari Connor, who I like a lot, who really surprised down the stretch. I don't know if he was supposed to be as big a part of their defense as he became, but Brian Cook got hurt, which led to a door opening for him. I'm saying he's going to lead the team in interceptions. And part of that goes back to some of the logic about McDuffie moving more outside. I think they'll have to play a little bit differently. And when it comes to coverage, and they'll be asking a lot more of Connor in this kind of system, maybe like what Tyrann Mathieu was doing back when he was really on his game when he first got here. He's got the skill set. Trent McDuffie's been talking him up throughout the offseason about the things he's been doing, the spots he's been playing in. And I think he's got, you put a guy who's got safety skills that close to the ball, you're going to have a lot more opportunities to get deflections and make plays on the ball. So I like the idea, and really no one else intercepts the ball in this defense anyway. So somebody's got to do it. I will take Chamari Connor to be the guy.
So what do you got him leading it with? 3?
I'll give him 4.
3. I mean, 3 would be
makes him like Rod Woodson on this unit.
3 would have led last year.
Yeah, 3 would have led last year. Only one guy had 2, right? Everybody else had 1.
Yeah, Snead had 2. Everyone else just had 1. I'm just going to cut in here because I almost picked that same thing on my 3 bold predictions. I just,
Instead you're going Mike Pinnell.
I came up with 3 better ones.
Okay, all right, Sam. I like Chamari Connor a lot. I was really shocked. I have to give credit on a number of guys to Brett Beach and his staff because Michael Dana, and now again, I didn't see any of his, and I guess all the good tape was his Central Michigan or Eastern Michigan, whichever other Michigan school he went to.
Yeah.
Because I'm and Jeff talked about you never even knew he was.
I remember a guy being at Michigan.
I'll never forget that. I watch a lot of Michigan football. I didn't even know he was on the team. I thought that was great, but I couldn't find anything on him. I'm like, did they just draft a guy to cover kicks? Like, and same thing with Chamari Connor. I'm like, well, what is he? And they seem to be great. I remember I had a personnel guy in the league tell me that about L'Jarius Sneed. I said, what do you think about L'Jarius Sneed? He said, listen, at Louisiana Tech, they weren't sure if he was a safety or a corner. I don't see how that gets any better. We weren't going to take him. Right? And I was like, oh, okay. And then L'Jarius Sneed ends up being a badass corner that you can see playing safety later in his career, plays in the slot, rush, ended up being this Swiss Army knife of a guy. So, and they seem to have done that again with Chamari Connor. I think he's been a great pick, and I've learned when I'm not really sure why they're taking a guy, I should probably dig deeper because they've been pretty good on it. All right, Sam, 3 better. You've already given us 1. What's your number 2 on the list?
So my second one is that this is going to be the last hurrah for this defensive coaching staff.
Wow. Sam taking big swings here.
That I don't mean the whole staff, but I mean they have had Dave Merritt as part of their staff for a long time. Joe Cullen has been a really good defensive line coach. They have Brendan Daly at linebacker, and that this next off season, one of those guys moves on and gets a D coordinator job. Dave Merritt, I think, is the most obvious candidate, and previously was that he wanted to stay home. This offseason, when he gets the taste of interviewing for San Francisco, we talked to him last month. It was pretty clear the guy thinks he's ready because his family has given them their blessing that he's ready. And the rest of the league the secret should not still be a secret on Dave Merritt. He's been participating in these accelerator programs. Like, there's reasons to believe that he will get an opportunity. And look, Joe Cullen, I think, is ready too. He's got some history in his background that I don't know exactly how teams will assess that. But I just think one of the reasons their defense is good is certainly Steve Spagnuolo, but one of the less talked about reasons is their defensive assistants are really good. And I just think it's the last year that they're able to have all those guys together.
Again, you walk into the clutches of my planning and my trap. I agree wholeheartedly. I don't like that. Isn't that one of the great mysteries? I know it, I said this for a number of years with the Patriots, like when they were keeping Charlie Weiss and Romeo Cornell. I think we find out later maybe why those guys weren't getting head coaching jobs when we saw them be head coaches. But every year, like the Patriots would have their whole staff back. It's like, what are you doing? Like at some point, rob some of these guys. And I think we can see, we know you mentioned Dave Merritt and his reason for not taking, his family and everything, for not interviewing, not actively pursuing defensive coordinator jobs. I'll go even further. I think it's a joke that Steve Spagnuolo hasn't been looked at as a head coach, if not hired. As I look back, and I'll say this, I said the same thing about Andy Reid when people were ripping Andy Reid. And I know this sounds dumb now, but like there really were people like, well, he doesn't run the ball. He can't play defense, can't win the big game. Sucks in the clock management, all those different things. It's like, well, you got to look at the personnel that he's dealing with. And Steve Spagnuolo's head coaching job at the Rams, like nobody could have succeeded, right? Like the quarterback was completely wrong. And that was the era when the quarterback, he was one of the most expensive players in all of the NFL, and he was hurt all the time, right? Sam Bradford was, I think, the highest paid quarterback in football when Steve Spagnuolo was coaching him. So how in a cap era you're supposed to work with a quarterback who's not that good and then is also super expensive? It can't work. So, like, I don't know how that's not given a mulligan, and all he's done is succeeded. That's my second bold and daring prediction, and that is that Steve Spagnuolo is the head coach next year. I think somebody rectifies that problem, and if I'm going to stay true to my first prediction, which was they'd be a top 5 defense, he goes top 5 defense again. Obviously, if they win 3 in a row, I think they come calling for just about everybody and their brother off of the staff. But if they even come close to it and have another year where they're playing in the conference championship game, Steve Spagnuolo should be a head coach. And will he succeed? I don't know. He might be too buddy with guys. He might be too much of a player's coach. He might be just the perfect defensive coordinator and wrong as a head coach. There are lots of guys I've seen hired that I know are not going to succeed as head coaches. And I at least don't know what Steve Spagnuolo can do, given a head coaching job. I'll take Steve Spagnuolo to be a head coach in the NFL. Why are you laughing, Sam?
Well, I mean, is that what you look for in a head coach? I don't know if he's going to succeed. I mean, you look for the guys
ringing vote of confidence.
He's going to be a 65-year-old defensive-minded head coach, and I do realize that there were some defensive-minded guys that got hired this last cycle more than the previous one. But like those two things are working against him, right? In addition to the past resume. So the thing I'll agree with you on is that one is a bold prediction.
Yes, this is what it's bold and daring predictions.
Right.
Yeah, you know what he needs, though? He needs, and I'm not wishing any ill will on Andy Reid. He needs to have what happened with Bruce Arians and Chuck Pagano back in Indianapolis, where Bruce Arians got actually an audition for a season to prove he could be a head coach and got that team in the playoffs. Then obviously Arizona went and hired him, and he wound up in Tampa. That's what a Steve Spagnuolo needs to have happen to get an opportunity. And that's it's sad to say that, but I agree with you. He's just so old. Resumes stop mattering at that point in his career.
So I will give you a couple of scenarios on how it happens, right? I would say Buffalo gets tired of McDermott's crap, but I don't think they're going to go defense to defense. I think they'll go for hire an offensive guy to try to marry up with Josh Allen. I don't think that's it. But if Dallas fires Mike McCarthy, I think he would be perfect for taking over in Dallas. Ooh. I really do. If you get him a good offensive coordinator, I think there are some teams like, are you hiring Steve Spagnuolo? First of all, what NFL coach? How many NFL coaches last as long as Andy Reid has lasted with the Chiefs? Almost none. If you can find a guy that's good for 5 years, grab him. Okay. And I think if you believe that Steve Spagnuolo can be good for 5 years, I think you grab him. I think Cleveland, if it went south in Cleveland with their defensive personnel, they'd say, okay, let's bring in this great defensive mind. We'll go with the defensive side of the ball. I think Cleveland would be a possibility where he could land and have success. And there was one, Dallas, Cleveland, and what was the other one I thought? I think the Giants. I think he could go to the Giants.
Yeah, because he's been there. Do you think if Andy Reid retired tomorrow, which he won't, that he would get the job over Matt Nagy?
Well, why is just to back up on the Cleveland thing, like why would Jim Schwartz, who's led the number 1 defense, not get the job over someone like Steve Spagnuolo?
Because I think Jim Schwartz has been there and proven to be an absolute train wreck as a head coach.
What Spags has been, right?
No, not in the sense that you're like an embarrassment challenging the other coach to a fight.
The Lions went to the playoffs twice with Jim Schwartz there. Or once with Jim Schwartz there.
Once, I think. Yeah. Because I think if it goes south in Cleveland, everyone's gone, and they look to redo it, right? Like that. That's what I think. Again, I was just looking at the personnel and like if you had an opening and you wanted a guy, I like Myles Garrett. What they've got there in Cleveland, I think he could have success. But listen, it's bold and daring. Plus, you never know where somebody might come from, what might be available, what job might be available. They're always kind of wacky. And so I think he's a highly qualified candidate that will get a look. And I don't see, do you see a lot of boy wonders right now? I think they were out of boy wonders. One or two will probably pop up this year, but who's the boy wonder 35-year-old guy to go grab right now?
Ben Johnson now.
Ben Johnson, right?
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, that's it, but he's turned down one job. Are you sure he's, going to turn down, not going to turn down everything else?
No.
So, I mean, I just don't see that many great young candidates. So I think Steve Spagnuolo can get a shot. It's bold. It's daring is what it is. It's bold and daring predictions.
Yeah.
Bold, daring, and wrong.
Well, wow. Okay. There's a couple. Would he really want to deal with Jerry Jones?
No.
Nobody wants to, but
nobody wants to, but that point is like he couldn't afford to be picky, right? I mean, if he does get an offer, it would have to be a now or never situation.
How about this? Bold and daring. Sam will choose a color other than beige for a wall counter shirt.
It's salmon, actually.
That's what it is? Okay. All right. Good to know. Dallas Giants, Eagles. It's so obvious. I don't know. Like you did ask the question because we had Terry's putting it back to a Spags or Nagy. If Andy Reid retired, who would get the job, Sam? I'll give you my side first.
Matt Nagy. I mean, there's the connection with Brett Veach. They went to college together. One of them was literally throwing touchdown passes to the other. I think there's a reason. There's a comfort level, a guy that is comfortable also with the quarterback, which would be the number one job qualification if that opened up.
Yeah.
I do think Matt Nagy is going to be the head coach of the Chiefs at some point.
Sorry to interrupt, Soren. I'm answering that this is an off-season question.
In season, you think it might be Spags?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Or even Dave Tobe, to be honest.
Why?
Because I think if it's an in-season situation,
I think the Tobe thing's kind of smart.
You want your defensive still in your defense. Yeah, you don't want to. You want to spread, as little responsibilities across the board. So,
I think Matt Nagy is going to be the head coach of the Chiefs at some point. But I think in season it could be. I could see Steve Spagnuolo getting 2 or 3 years, and then handing it to Nagy. Like they're like, hey, here's a thank you to Spags for everything that he's done. But I do think they were college teammates, for God's sake. If you don't see Matt Nagy and Brett Veach working side by side, then we're looking at different pictures here as far as I'm concerned. All right, number 3 on our bold and daring predictions. Jeff, you're up again. Where would you like to go?
I will hearken back to a comment. I don't know who made it about George Karlaftis getting 10 sacks. It's not Karlaftis I'm talking about. It's sacks that I'm talking about. And I'm going with Drew Tranquill being in the top 4 on this team in sacks this year. I almost went top 3, which has been really bold. But I definitely feel like he's going to be 4. He will be right after Jones, Karlaftis, and I guess Mike Dana.
Okay.
He had 4.5 this past year. And they're going to be blitzing a lot more. Most of their pressure, we talked about this before in the past, that most of their pressure has come off blitz packages as good as Chris Jones is. But I just feel like he's underrated. I almost said he was going to lead the team in tackles, but I think Nick Bolton will get there again. But I think he's definitely going to have an impact in the sack game. And so I'll go with Drew Tranquill in that category.
Drew Tranquill, 4th. George Karlaftis getting 10 sacks was one of my bold predictions last year. He
barely got there.
Yeah, 10.5. He got there. He got there. It's all right. I got more where that came from. Don't worry. What do you think? Drew Tranquill, 4th.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that the Chiefs acquired him. It was because his ability to be a blitzing linebacker. Last year in Los Angeles, they kind of made him that guy. And I think he had 5 sacks his last year in LA. Then, like Jeff said, 4.5 a year ago. And 9.5 sacks in the last 2 years. He's obviously got the ability to do it. I don't think he's going to finish in the top 4, but I see the rationale behind him being a guy that blitzes a lot and gets some sacks.
By the way, I do like that one.
You're
Sam
taking
does-
a lot of heat, Sam, for your
I know,
decor.
the background.
Yeah.
This is why everyone's tuning in, is just to
Yeah.
see the background.
It's that.
Tranquil's such a great signing. Glad they kept Tranquil over Gay. Terry said that a couple of times tonight. I think he's just trolling Tommy Moe, who always had Willie Gay as he has predicted that Willie Gay is going to go get 10 sacks wherever
He
he
was.
lands. Yeah.
How many put that on paper? Put that on a.
How he put it up here.
Really?
He said right here.
That's
Here he
bold.
goes. I tried that prediction last year with Willie Gay getting 6 sacks, Jeff. He had 1. Didn't work out so well for me.
Yeah, you put on the wrong guy, wrong horse.
Wrong guy. I mean, because Tranquil came and had 4.5
Yeah.
for the team. Yeah, no, listen, I love keeping Tranquil. I like Willie Gay, but I mean, I think there was a sense of like, there's a lot of hand holding with Willie Gay. I mean, let's be clear. And I think they wanted less hand holding. And so, he hit the open market, and I don't think he got what he thought he was going to get. There may have been an offer to Willie Gay. He didn't take it. And they said, okay, we're moving on. But we'll see what he does.
To use a Royals analogy, he was the MJ Melendez of the defense. Kept waiting for all these big things to happen, and never saw it happen.
Yeah, never saw it happen. By the way, Willie Gay did go to the Saints, right?
Yeah.
So that makes Colin Saunders, Willie Gay, Tyrann Mathieu,
I
and
think Sorensen was down there.
I
Wasn't
think
he?
Dan Sorensen's moved on.
and so was
The era
Tano
is over.
Tano Pasquino's down there.
I think he got that too recently, right?
He just got hurt recently, but he got hurt in
He's still playing?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody who used to play for the Chiefs apparently plays for the Saints.
No.
That's their big plan. That's where they're going. All right. Number 3, Sam, where do you go on this one?
So I know we're talking about the offense with the next podcast, and some people might think this is more of an offensive thing, but I'm going to say that after being negative 11 in the turnover differential last year, the Chiefs have a positive turnover differential this year. And I know, like I said, some people will think it's more of an offensive stat, and like that's going to play into it. I think they've got receivers that are going to drop fewer passes. We're going to see fewer of those being tipped passes. But it goes hand in hand a little bit with what Jeff said about Shamari Connor. Like, the defense blitzes too frequently not to just luck into some of these. And the main reason they were negative 11 last year, as much as we focused on the giveaways, because, I mean, look, those are big-time plays in games. They were third worst in the NFL in interceptions. And that's the number I think that's most likely to change in their turnover scenario. So that's why I'm going with a positive turnover differential. Look, they were negative 2 years ago as well, but negative 11 last year, and I think they flip it to positive.
Yeah, I'm in agreement on that. We'll get to some. Maybe we'll toss around some of the ones that didn't make the cut for us, or some of the other things we considered and didn't go with. But I think they've got to be better, right? Like, there was this I forget what's his name. Anyway, he used to write one of the college football magazines, and he had a stat: turnovers equal turnarounds. And right, so if a team was way plus on the plus minus one year, you could kind of like fading and betting against them the next year was probably a good idea, because they were probably going to struggle, and not be as good. Like the funny bounces went their way. Now they're going to go against them. And I do kind of agree with that. Although I think there are guys like Marty Schottenheimer, some of them that are like, we're going to run the ball, and we're only going to throw safe passes, and I'm not going to turn it over. And then they spend all their resources on defense and they get more takeaways. I think you can create a scenario of being good at the plus minus, but I think you can also do it to a detriment. I think it was a detriment for Marty Schottenheimer. I mean, I think he coached to win that stat more than he coached to win a Super Bowl. I think he did it because he thought that would win him a Super Bowl. And so I think it actually is a more bold prediction than maybe Sam will get credit for, because I don't think Andy Reid coaches for that stat anymore. I think he's cut it loose, let it go, and said, look, if we turn it over, it's fine as long as we get plays. And they've drafted a lot of speed, guys.
Yeah.
They put a lot of speed on, which means they want to send it down the field. You send it down the field. I don't know how safe that is. Sorry, Jeff, to cut you off.
No, I was going to say, I would almost bet you. This is where Eric would come in handy. No offense, Sam, but he has a huge database. He can have to type as much. He can just tap, one key and everything pops up in front of him. But I almost bet you that most teams back when Marty Schottenheimer was playing and going even in the last 10 years, the teams that have had the most turnovers probably had the best pass rushers. And so people coming off the edge, people coming blind, that leads to quicker throws. It leads to more forced fumbles. I think now when you're designing blitzes, it's right in front of you. You have hot reads. It's just a different way of playing football. I think that affects that number being what it is.
We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Whether it's seal coating, whether it's building an entirely new parking lot, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. All right. So Chiefs will have a positive turnover differential. That is number 3 for Sam McDowell. Number 3 for me, George Karlaftis. I'm going to double down on last year. We'll have 15 sacks this year.
Yeah.
15 sacks.
Yeah.
He has had 17 sacks in his last 24 games. If you throw in the playoffs, that number rises to 20 in his last 28 games. That is pacing for almost that range. What is that? Let me do the math. I guess I should have probably done this quick math.
15 and 21 games.
Average. It puts him on pace for a little over 12. But I'm going to say he takes it up a notch. He's doing the work in the offseason. I also think that, they start to trust him more and they start to put him into more situations to line him up. The fact that he's producing, more production you get, the more they try to ISO you. And, I do think Chris Jones is there times that like, hey, I got my double team, I'm good. George Karlaftis' motor never stops. Like that one thing about him, that conversation about him when he came out of college, I think it's true. And I think he's working really hard at his craft to get the technique part down. I think he was a lot just kind of a bull rush guy. I don't think, and I bring this up because, Eric Hicks was a fine football player for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he wasn't Derek Thomas. He had a 14 sack season. My big signing that I wanted the Chiefs to make was Hendrickson when he left the Saints and went to the Bengals. He's a fine football player, but he's not Derek Thomas. He had a 15 sack season, right? If you're just around the football and you're relentless, you have a big year. I might be wrong on the year. George Karlaftis might check in with 8.5 sacks, 11.5 sacks. He may not get to 15, but I will say this. He's going to have 15 one year, right?
Oh.
It's going to happen because he never stops. And I think working with Steve Spagnuolo is the perfect guy. They work him on the inside and ISO him. I maybe should just cash out my chips with my win last year with him having 10.5 sacks. And I said he 10. But again, it's bold and daring, not mathematically probable and daring, Sam. It's
Sam's giving you his poker face right now. Sam's like trying to resist the urge, just like laughing out loud.
I mean, Jeff, how many sacks do you think George Karlaftis has this year?
9.
9 was the exact number I was going to say too. I would have given you credit for being bold if you had said 12, to be honest.
Yeah.
12 is a lot of sacks. And like 10.5 was a lot of sacks last year for George Karlaftis. And I agree with you. Many of them are on the exact nature of the way you described his play.
This sounds horrible, and I've seen this comment a couple times in the comment section about FAU. He did so little last year. I was like, who played for Florida Atlantic University on the team? Who went to FAU?
Yeah. There's a lot of people that FAU is going to break out this year.
Man.
And if he does, I like my George Karlaftis pick even more. Listen, I thought about just going with 12.5. Like originally when I typed 12.5, but I'm like, that's literally 2 more sacks than he had last year. Right? Like, so it's bold and daring. First of all, if he has 12 or 12.5 and creates a lot of havoc and has a lot of pressures, I'm going to look pretty good at the end anyway. Right? Like, I'm not going to look.
No, you're already hedging the season.
I'm not hedging it.
You're 5 minutes removed from your prediction.
I'm not hedging
Sorry,
it.
walking it back. That's right.
I'm not hedging it. Like at the end of the year, like Sky Moore being like a stud was not going to look good. Right? But there are ways that you can be like I said, I pointed out, I said that you should have more than 3 Pro Bowlers on defense last year. And I gave you the names. Chris Jones was the only one that was there. But am I an idiot for saying L'Jarius Sneed? The guy didn't give up a touchdown all year. Am I an idiot for saying Trent McDuffie? He was first team All-Pro. Am I an idiot for saying Nick Bolton? He was the best linebacker in football.
Last year?
In football.
No response on that.
Yeah.
No, but at least the Nick Bolton was still very good. I still don't mind putting Nick Bolton on there. And I still think he might make the Pro Bowl. I think he's more likely to make a Pro Bowl than he is first team All-Pro because it's of his peers. And I think he gets a lot more credit from his peers than he does others. But that's an example where I didn't get it right. That wasn't a dumb prediction.
No.
It was bold and it was fairly accurate. That's what I would say about that one. What did you kick around that didn't make the cut, by the way?
For me, it was Karlaftis, which, it's to go from 10 to 9. It's not really that bold. Mike Dana was high on the list. Like, he really just missed the cut. Like, I don't think he's going to be as productive as he was before. I had Mike Pennell playing in like 3 games just to tweak you. That was about the highlights of my list. Yeah.
Matt has Derek Nottie with 2 sacks. I mean, that's bold.
Yeah.
That's bold. If he could get across the line of scrimmage twice, I might give you, some participation points for that one. Sam, what did you have as far as some of the other predictions?
Mine were Trent McDuffie and Shamari Connor, really. I mean, like interception numbers, which is why I ended up grouping them together as the turnover differential being different, is because I do think those guys will have more interceptions. Those guys will be involved in more turnovers. McDuffie was involved in turnovers. Like he did force some fumbles last year.
I kicked around the idea of Josh Williams leading the team in picks because I think they're going to pick on him, and I think he's pretty good. I think he'll suck up a lot of the snaps that L'Jarius Sneed had. So I kicked around the idea of having Josh Williams lead the team.
Is he the starter? Is he going to be the guy, or is it Jalen Watson?
Well,
Watson played more snaps last year.
Yeah, Watson's been dealing with something during the offseason, so haven't been able to see him line up yet this offseason. But it's going to be one of those things where both those guys are going to be playing with the ones in training camp. The interesting thing is if, like a guy like Haddon, like their 6th-round pick can develop, or Najee Johnson comes back from this injury, a guy they had lining up with the ones at some time last year. But I do think Josh Williams, if it starts tomorrow, that's who they'd be playing tomorrow.
I what else did I kick around? I kicked around Michael Dana getting to 10 sacks. I thought that would be a possibility because I think he's got, number one, with the contract, I think they're going to probably play him more, and Amenahu's going to be out longer, and he got a lot of his sacks when Amenahu was out. I kicked that idea around. I kicked around Trent McDuffie, but I'm like, how many picks for a pick number? And I was going to go with like 4 or 5, but I mean, I think Jeff nailed it when we talked about him last. That he doesn't gamble, right? He is just super solid, which is why you love him. And guys don't go to him. I think there'll be other people to pick on than McDuffie. I think he gets less attention, for one. I think that's another one. And I was going to come up with Dave Merritt being a defensive coordinator. I kicked that one around. Sam covered that. And then I gave that some thought. And I was trying to come up with one for Leo Chenal. Did anybody have anything for Leo Chenal? I was going to try to put Leo Chenal. I think he could be the guy who blitzes, although it's not disguising much because he's definitely a downhill player. But I was kicking around Leo Chenal for like 6 sacks, but I didn't know if that was bold.
Yeah, you look at that defense, and it's like so many of these guys, like they fall into like very specific categories for their skill sets and how they're utilized. So it's really hard to see like something like this, a huge floor, a huge ceiling, right? It's like they kind of stay where they are when you look at what they are. And so, I mean, really, even Nick Bolton, I couldn't think of one thing aside from the interceptions, the obvious stuff with Nick Bolton. I'm not going to pick him to intercept like 5 passes, which is just a waste of time for this kind of exercise. But there really aren't a lot of guys who you look at and say, man, if things broke right, they could really do amazing things.
Yeah. I'm going to love it when Nick Bolton picks off his 5th pass and returns it for his 3rd touchdown.
Yeah. Then flag football when he's like 45.
Whenever it happens. I will be.
Yeah. Did he have an interception in college? I know there's got to be some Missouri fans on here. Was he I'm
sure he did. I thought I got rid of all the Nick Bolton hate when Eric Eager left the podcast, but no, it looks like you two are going to tag team your way to hating Nick Bolton.
I like Nick Bolton.
Nick Bolton had two interceptions in his sophomore year, none as a junior, none as a freshman.
Okay, so there you go. Once they recognize, like, don't play with that fire.
Yeah, don't throw to that guy. Yeah.
They quit going that direction. I think
Correct.
that was pretty clear on what it was. We're always brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Don't risk accidents, liability in your parking lot. They take you away from your business. A brightly striped lot keeps everything moving smoothly in your parking lot, cuts down on those accidents, and keeps you focused on your business, keeps your parking lot as safe as possible. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Don't forget, on our next podcast, we will be breaking down our bold and daring predictions for the offense. Yes, that will happen on our next podcast. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, columnist, Soren Petro, I'm from Sports Radio 810 WHB, saying thank you very much for joining us here